free time, we used to sit around and say, where were you during the war? And we'd say, I was in Dachau, which is what I was in Treblinka and so on. And we talked, and I remember one incident when I was talking, I was probably about 7. And this girl was mean to me. She poked me in the ribs. She says, say it in German. And so we were so fluid in the languages, so sometimes we have to stop and think what language we're talking to. But I always like to tell my students when I came in, like, especially if somebody has kind of a hard name. I have a hard time with W's. I would much rather say, Iowa, where are you going? Instead of Iowa, where are you going? Why do you say it like that? So my name in Polish, I'm actually Polish-German. My mom was German, and my dad was Polish. So my name in Polish is, are you Polish? I happen to have a student one year. Oh, no.
Here, maybe this pen will work. Most of them don't.
Oh, it's typical of every school.
I carry my own around.
I do too. I have to bring my purse. Okay, it's. And I say, okay, I'm going to say it 3 times. Mariszka, oh, I forgot my K here. Mariszka Teresa Gęślicka. That was my real name. Okay, so the story goes that the nuns, when they stopped me in the hallway, and I have an older brother, sister, and a younger brother. Janina, Kazik, I'm Mariszka, and there was Blajik. The problem was Blajik. Sister stops me, the tall sister, and she says, now, what is your younger brother's name? I said, dear, I always curtsy. Dear sister, it's Blajik. No, how do you say it? Blajik. How do you spell it? V-L-A-W-O. She goes, oh my gosh. This is a true story. She opened her book. She goes, it's St. Lawrence feast day. So we call him Larry. So she said, you go tell him he's called Larry. So I went and said, guess what, Blajik? Your name is Larry. Because I'm not going to be Larry. Yes, you are. And years later, I called him. I was going through all my pictures. I was trying to bring somebody. We just moved. I forgot where I put him. I'm absent-minded. And I called him on the phone. I said, hey, Blajik, I was thinking how lucky you were. She goes, why? He lived in California. I said, because if Sister had opened the book, and it was St. Gertrude's feast day, you would have been called Gertie. And he goes, yeah, I thought you got I thought I was. So anyway, sometimes when the children, I taught 7th grade for 40 years. And when the children would get nasty, I said, I'll say your name 10 times, you say my name 10 times, so you write it. So anyway, but I came to the experience I want to share with you is basically, like I was telling your teacher, where she is.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. No, you're the teacher.
Oh, okay. And one day I was driving home. This shows you how slow my mind is. And I was driving here in Oregon. I go, you know what? I'm 75 years old. I said, I'm the survivor of the camp. I'm a child of the Holocaust. And my kids really don't know a lot about it. I never really started talking about it for a long time because it was pretty painful, you know. And so I decided that I would give, I was involved in the Anne Frank exhibit, and I was involved, I actually was asked to go give talks all over the country. I said, I don't think the country can help handle me. I mean, I'm just, you know, but, so I do, for teachers, I do things for the schools and stuff like that. So I'll just kind of start. I found out last summer that I was born in Russia. And being a history teacher, it's interesting that I remember one incident when I was getting ready to be brought to the United States. And an American lady, my feet couldn't even touch the floor. I'm very visual, you say something to me, I picture it. And she read off this name, and the American lady said, "What is it?" And the lady who translated in Polish, in English, to her, she said, "It means the town by the river of the golden sands." She goes, "Oh." And she put her hand on my head, and she goes, "You cute little thing, but nobody cares where you were born." And so they put down Sands, Poland. There's no such thing. So for years I wondered what kind of town it was. Well, in the travel book for Poland, way up north, you don't have a map here, do you?
I can get one, yes.
Just a map of Europe in general.
Europe? All right.
I'll show you. I know that I was involved with Russia, and I did my thesis in history on Russian Revolution, Trotsky and Stalin, Trotsky and Lenin. And let me show you something about finding out about myself, because I don't know a lot about it. Okay, here's Russia, and here's Poland. Now, you have to, if you don't know anything about history, after World War I, Poland was not supposed to exist, in fact. So, I was born right in this area, which was part of Russia. And that's all I need. And that was, thank you. And I told my son, I always said, the name of the city, right under it, it translates the Golden Sands, known as the City of the Golden Sands. Oh, I was so happy. I know now where I was born. I went back to Europe 7 years, because I had an older brother, Zygmunt, that I only remember vaguely. And my son John goes Russia, Greece, all those places. And he had met him. He said, "Mom, you need to go back and meet Zygmunt." And Zygmunt always said that he wanted to see me before he died. Well, I found his wife. Her name was Barbara. I wanted her to be Zonia. I said, "You're Barbara?" No. And he died 2 years before I found him, so I never got to know him. But anyway, because one of the reasons, I got to tell you this, when I started doing history, I remember bombings. And I remember standing by a windowsill and just peeking over. And the reason I remember is my mother was crying and the tears dropped. And I looked up and I saw these black things in the sky, and then they would make a whistling sound and drop down. And of course they were bombing us. But Poland, I was born in 1940, and I remember it, so I know I was a year old. But then it comes together because Germany didn't invade Poland for 41. And by the time they got to the Russian, where they actually went into Russia, you're going for almost 42. So that made sense and stuff. So I try to figure things out, and every once in a while I think of a name, like Ludwig. And I asked my sister about Ludwig, and she said, well, Ludwig and Olaf were brothers to my mother. She was German. I think they were part of the SS. Why did we survive? There's a certain question. And my dad would not talk about it. My brother COCC, he said, don't ask me. And he knows more about it than I do, and I would like to know and stuff. But I will tell you the experiences of the war. The first really time when I began to realize, first of all, I'm very outgoing. I'm not shy. You know, I just wasn't. I would go look, if I was curious about something, I would go look and stuff, and they had to kind of chain me down to my mother. And the first really incident that I remember where I knew things weren't good was when we were on a train, cattle train. My brother Larry wasn't born yet, so I know it was 2 years old. and they were packed in. And now, you know, it's interesting, I don't remember smells. You would think if you're, you know, with all the filth and stuff, but they say that if you live around that, after a while you don't notice the smells, it's decomposition and stuff. And the train stopped, you know what couples are? People that were hired, like Polish people who were hired by the Nazi to brutalize the Polish population. They got a bed to sleep in, some extra food, at least 6 months, got to live 6 months more. And they were very vicious, very vicious. The train stopped, well, there are a lot of dead bodies, so the people who can walk come out first. And I'm sitting by my mom on the floor. My mom was the person I am like, and anything good about me is because of her. I mean, really, I tell the children, my mother was the most influential person in my life. She would never spank me, which I deserved. I never remember anything negative about her. And anyway, she was sitting and crying. Then of course I behaved. Otherwise I don't. And I heard this woman screaming. So you have to visualize a cattle cart. And they're getting the dead bodies out. And we're sitting against the wall. Mama's here, I'm next to her, and the people sitting. And the woman is just screaming and screaming. Well, that really piqued my interest, you know. And I wanted to look and see what happened. And my mama said, no, Mariska, no, no. And I, yes, I want to see. And I know now she was delivering a baby. And they come in and they take the baby by the ankles and smash it against the side of the car. And they bayoneted the woman, and I guess it was her husband or somebody attacked with the swastikas. They attacked him, and they just took the gun up, shot him, and he fell down. And the thing that I remember besides the killing was the couples were laughing, and they came and one took him by the legs, the other one took him by the arms, and they said something, and they went making him run, and they threw him into the wagon they had for dead people. And the thing was, I got up and I looked, and I said, Papa, look, the snow is red. I relate to colors. I remember, so when I tell you stories, I can't tell you the year, but I remember if the flowers were in bloom, what the weather was like, the sky was blue, things like that. But places, no, and stuff. So that was one of my very first experience. Could I tell you a lot about the war? The thing that a lot of people don't understand is that, have you seen Schindler's List? Any of you? Okay, do you know how they in the apartment? Okay. My dad worked for the Nazis, or he worked for the Russians. I don't know whether we're still in Russia or not. But he would do heavy machinery, and he came back, and his finger was hanging, and Mom took her scissors and cut him off. So we were in apartments, and being a child, I don't know much about where my mom and dad were all day, but there was 2 incidents I remember, and that was, we had like a bed. Number one, you never undressed. You wore 2 or 3 dresses, 2 or 3 pair of socks. You were, basically you were walking grocery store. We had pockets and all that stuff, and Mom would put, we put crackers and cheese and things like that, because we had to leave at any time. It was very dangerous. And one incident that I noticed happened, see, not every day of my life. I knew that you can't go here and you can't do that. And the Gestapo always came at night, and they wore boots with, they put brads on the bottom, so when you walked, they made noise. And my mom and us, all 4 kids, we heard them, and it was so quiet. If my mom was afraid, I was afraid. If my mom was sad, I was sad. And we could actually hear the papers rustling. And they said something, and it was, they were laughing, and they stopped at our door, and we were just, come on, like this. And they said something, and they went to the next door. Then we heard the screaming, the doors being knocked down, the yelling and the shooting and all that kind of stuff. And they were laughing, and then they were gone. So in the morning, I used to play with the girl next door, a little girl. The next morning, my mom said, Mariska, don't go there. Well, of course, I gotta go see. So I did go look. And I remember the long, bloody streaks on the floor, and the wall was full of blood, and some things, signs were on it, like a swastika and stuff. And what happened to the people, they were killed. Why, I don't know. Then we were in that, when did this happen? I don't know, but it was in the fall. And it seems like all of a sudden I'm aware of it. And I have blanks and memories and stuff. And the bomb had fallen right through the middle of the building. And it was on fire. I'm a brat, okay? And we were on the second or third floor. And I remember my dad dragging me. He goes, come on, Mariska, we got to go. Hurry up, the building's on fire, you know, let's go. And I go, no, I don't want to go. And there was a lady in the hallway, and she had a buggy, and I always like kids. Always like, oh, I want to take the, Papa, take the baby. No, yeah, let's take the baby. And we looked in, and she said, Tote, he's dead. Oh, okay, then my dad says to my mom, to her, the lady, you come with us, and she said no, so she died in the bombing. But so here we have to go to the window. We didn't have a fire department. They're like people, like 4 or 5 people holding the blanket, and I'm supposed to jump out of the 3rd story. Give me a break. I mean, I'm Polish, but not that stupid. And my dad's, everybody else, mom's jumped out, my brothers have jumped out, people are jumping out. And I'm looking down there, I go, no, I'm not going. And I just dug my hands. I always remember, I got spanking during the war, okay, that's how bad I was. And he said, Mariska, you jump. I said, no, nein, nicht. Russian is nicht. And he goes, jump. I said, no. And I just was like, oh, like this, you know. So he just takes my feet and somersaults me out. Okay, so that's how I survived the bombing. And one of the other incidents was a train ride. I think my dad must have been very clever. And we rode in a train like a passenger train. We were being taken either to Germany or to Russia, I don't know. But this plane was bombed. It was on fire. And my dad was with us, and he said, don't go. The commandant, the Nazi soldier, whatever he was, coming down saying, Rouse, Rouse, Rouse. So the door was open this side, and it was all forest. We were up on the hill, and my dad said, no, stay. I go, okay, well, here comes this guy. He's on fire. The train's on fire. And this older gentleman just goes for the soldier. He shoots him. And I go, oh, okay, another one down. I mean, you know, it's like you don't really get that afraid of it because you've seen so much killing. And while the confusion was going, Dad made us jump out of the window. And I think it was a forever hill. I mean, I'm sure it was Mount Everest. But you know, those gravel things. And it was a creek there. He was clever. He had parts of a wagon in our clothes that we didn't know about, so a wooden thing that he put together. So my sister Yanina comes down. She dislocates both legs. She twirls and her legs go behind her. And she, to this day, remembers it. I said, yeah. And so she got to ride in the back, and then I had to walk, okay? That's why I remember it. And so, another incident was we were escaping. Do you know those refugee things you see? You know, they carry their clothing and their boxes, even stuff. So we were leaving whatever place we were, because we were very mobile. Dad was always hiding. And I remember one incident when the German soldiers were in town, and our place had got bombed, and we had to hide in the bushes all day, right in the middle of the park. And Dad would say, don't sneeze, don't cough, Marishka. Nobody else could control me. My mom would say, Watek, that means, okay, I'm getting a spanking, because I'm bad, stuff. But we were in the bushes, and the soldiers actually were marching by, and I could see the boots. And it was terrifying, you know. The disregard for life. I want to tell you a story that impressed me so much. People turning against each other. We had to go into a bomb shelter. It was like a sewer, stuff like that. And my mom, I was sitting by my mom, and my mom's crying, and I'm asking her, what are we going to eat? And she would have nothing, you know, that kind of, and I just remembered, and here comes this old lady. Now, in Europe, the old ladies were black, lace collar, and they were like a doily on their head. And she had long sleeves, and looked very nice. And she had 2 trunks, which fascinated me. She had 2 guys bringing the trunks in, and she was very mean, cross. And I don't like cross people. And I'm just watching her, and she also has like a downy type thing. She puts her on top of the trunks, and she has the boys, the young men, help her up. And they don't like her, and I can tell they're making fun of her. And she says something nasty, just the way she was talking, and they said something nasty. They left, and she fell off and died. Just like that, she fell off and died. And I told my mama, what? Mama said, she's dead. I said, oh, okay. So the 2 guys, this is a part of it, the picking up on not caring. These 2 guys came back, they each had a cigarette in their mouth, and they said, oh, and kicked her 2 or 3 times. And they said, she's dead, so they didn't carry her, they drug her out. And I was so fascinated by all this. Then they took her trunks, opened them up, closed them, and they were laughing the whole time. And I remember years later thinking about the callousness of people, how easily they turn against each other, you know, like they hear something, and even if it's a rumor, they label stuff. So having worked in the inner city, you know, like people say, well, you know, what do you expect of black people? I go, well, I expect straight A's myself, you know, just to have that feeling. But anyway, after that bombing in the train I told you about, we hid out in the woods. And then again, my memory is, I don't know all the things. I don't know how much time I have.
Well, you have plenty of time, and I think, were you interested in having some questions from?
Yeah, I would. If you have questions, just raise your hand. Do you? Any questions?
To encounter a soldier that wasn't fighting on your side, like a Nazi?
We're terrified. But, for example, after the war, you know, there's never peace after war. The Nazis were very strong and very mean. My father was wanted, and I don't know why, and I could never get it out of my older brother. I know he worked in the concentration camp taking dead bodies out and stuff like that. But 2 Nazi soldiers, SS, I knew what they were. Came to we had a house without a roof, cats in the attic, rats in the basement. We want to hear noise at night. And we had to sleep in like what used to be the potato room. and the Nazis came in, and we heard yelling and all that. My dad actually was crying, and my older brother, Kazik, my sister Yanina, myself, Larry, was just a baby. They jumped on the back. Well, I couldn't jump on. I tried biting them, but they had those black boots on, and they were saying things to my dad, and he was crying. And they took out the Luger, I knew what that was too, and they pointed at it, and I don't know if they intentionally meant to miss or just give a warning, and the bullet hit him there, and they were horrible. You go into a town, and they would terrorize the Nazi kids that were the elite after the war, and they were nothing now. They would, you know, find out, like, even if you weren't in a camp or a survivor, they'd come and they'd terrorize. There was one incident where an American soldier told a story that we had all nationalities in the orphanage, all religions, and, you know, and we had a lot of Jewish survivors. And there was an incident where a Jewish girl, about 15, 16, you know, was going to town, and the people were, Germans were very mean to us. I mean, I had a Polish name and stuff. And they raped this one girl, and she was screaming, and these soldiers were, American soldiers, asked her what it was, and they said, those two boys running. And the soldiers caught him, and they shot him in the groin to let him go. I mean, the German soldiers were horrible.
So
yeah.
The American soldiers did this to the German soldiers or boys?
The boys that were the Nazi group, the Aryan race. I used to laugh at that, the Aryan race. Okay, history lesson. The Aryans came and settled India. They are brown skin, straight black hair, and they introduced the caste system. They were soldiers, very military, and the idea of being like an Aryan was military-like, but they're black. And so my Aryan Nation boys, I'd say, history lesson. And you go, is it really true? Yes, you're dumb. But it was hard even for, we had a lady who had been a capo, you know, in the orphanage, okay, the first year. You have to have people run it, so they would get able-bodied Germans to come in and well, they did, we used to say, don't get anybody who's fat. You know, they didn't suffer. And we tell the Americans, don't trust him, you know, he's coupled. So we had a lady there, and the Red Cross was sending army blankets and clothing, dextromultus, powdered milk, powdered egg, and rock candy, you know, the white, and we were supposed to each get a box of it, and those big Montrose crackers, they're real big and stuff. We never got it, and the Red Cross lady came to inspect the orphanage, and we didn't have the blankets, and they wanted to find out where it was. And so anyway, they found out this lady had stolen her. She took everything, and we went in her room. The Duchess took me in the room, and I mean the wall was just boxes and boxes of shoes, boxes and boxes of toothpaste and stuff like that. And we found out how mean she was. Can I tell you a story about her? Yeah. She was, we kids kind of know the grown-ups were too trusting. And she used to put us in straitjackets, okay? So I'm maybe 7 years old. But at night we had to go to the bathroom. We'd say, Frau, I call her the woman from hell, okay? And we have to potty. No, she tied us down. We had wet our beds. She beat us. I mean, it was just like a cycle. Well, I was 6 or 7. I helped take care of babies, and I had Johann. Johann was, I think he was Hungarian. He had club feet. Okay, So when he ran and stuff. So my job was to hold on to him when we were taking walks and stuff like that. And it was, one day it was raining, it's just a thunderstorm. And she goes, Rouse, Rouse, get back in the orphanage. And he couldn't run because, and so he fell into the puddle. She takes out this, she always wore her black dress, black coat, black, we knew she was a Nazi. And she took it out and it has those leather things on it. And she says, you get up. And I'm going, don't hit him. And she grabbed her hand and sunk my teeth into her. I would not let go. And she just hit me. So Johann is laying in the mud. And if we get back to orphanage and I'm a tattletale, I go tell the American lady. And so they decided she couldn't go and walk with us, which is okay with us. But now, why didn't we get rid of her right away? So we went walking to Bremen. The place the orphanage was Mühlenteich. And we came back and we heard screaming. It was 2 floors. And we run up and here she is. She has Johann tied to a chair, his legs tied to the arms, his back this way, tied, ropes all the way around, tape over his mouth, and she had beat him so hard, and he had dirtied and wet himself, and she's just going and calling names and stuff. And we got the American Mr. Vickery, and they called the MPs. And we kids were so afraid of her because she was just abusing us, mistreating us. And they took 4 MPs. They put the collar around her neck, from the neck to the arms was the shackle, then from the shackles to the waist, from the waist to the ankles, and then across. That woman was so strong, I think she was possessed, that we watched the American soldiers, 2 of them dragging her on the cobblestones, and she's screaming, and we were all crying. We were so glad to see her go. So that's one example of it. One time when it was with my dad after the war, and Dad worked he was an artist, and he built things and stuff. And he told me, Mariska, go into town and get a loaf of bread. And so I went, and I am 6 years old. And I'm walking, it's kind of raining. And these 2 German kids come up, and I really didn't know how to talk German. Primarily we talked Polish. And they said something to me, and they took the bread out. Now, this is the way the German people treated us. And 2 older boys, they pulled me down, and my face went into the mud where I was blowing bubbles. They kicked me in the side. They stepped on my neck, called me names, and kept taking my head, putting it down. And then they left and took the loaf of bread. Now, I was afraid to tell Dad that I didn't bring the bread home because I wasn't supposed to lose it. But that's the way there were. You couldn't go into town right after the war. They still mistreated people. And we had a man and a wife, and I know he had an iron cross with the Nazis, and I heard him he said, we got to burn all these. If the Americans find out, we'll be shot. I go, okay, I'll go and tell them. I said, did you know that he has a funny looking cross from Germany? They didn't come back, they were gone. Why not? I'm not indifferent to suffering, but I've seen so much that I thought every child went through this, this stuff. So, yeah, the people, it was after the Berlin airlift that the Germans really realized that we were no longer their enemy, And when I was back in Germany 7 years ago to a sentimental journey, I tried to find an orphanage I was in. and some of the places I was. Germany is Americanized, okay? What a happy moment it was for me to get off the plane and see a McDonald's. I was so happy. I said, oh, McDonald's, thank you. I said, John, should I bow down? He said, Mom, behave yourself. Okay, for a while. And everybody now learns German right away. And I got to know, I'm very outgoing, as you can tell. So that we were in Amsterdam, and there were college kids sitting there having dinner. I got up, he said, John said, John's my younger son. He said, you're not going to go over there. I said, yes, I am. Here's my camera. And I took pictures, and I said, where are you going, all that. Then I sat down with him. I said, you, get up. I sit there. You take a picture. But the young people say, you know, our government, they're kind of anti-American stuff. And I said, you tell them, they wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the American people. I said, if I can come to your school and talk, I will, and I'll tell them off. And I do that. I said, that's so rude. And the girl said, you tell the American people, the young people love them, the grown-ups. I said, they suck. So there is always a little bit of the prejudice, and I don't know. Well, anyway, do you have any other questions? With the book that you're reading, Keeper's Wife, what do you think of that? What do you think the theme and stuff is of it?
I think it's, the theme of the book is...
But say, why did she write that? Why did they publish that?
Well,
Some books aren't worth reading, I know that, but I'm just wondering.
I think it was just because it was such a kind of gruesome time in history that people need to know about it to not repeat the same things over again, you know, maybe learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, but we don't really learn. How about
Slowly,
you?
but
Yeah.
surely.
I think your generation has to be the one that really kicks my generation in the butt and says, shape up. That's what I used to say. I'm a redneck, okay?
I think it kind of personalizes the story for people and kind of, takes us back because, like, I can't even picture, or like wrap my mind around what it was actually like, to live back then. And she goes into such detail. At first I was like, wow, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, I didn't actually wrap my mind around this nightmare that, you lived in and the people back then were.
Well, and everybody, like they say, everybody has a story. I did my thesis on Russian Revolution and Trotsky and Lenin, but they connect towards German, and I'm connected to the Russian culture. And don't trust the Russian. Okay. Here the Russians, very spiritual, good for, here, have a vodka, go and, I love you, but next day, I take a knife, I kill you. I mean, the Russians are up and down. They're very emotional people. I love the Russian music. But we used to I'll tell you a story about Berlin. We said to America, why are you friends with the Russian? They steal everything. They used toothpaste on bread. They thought it was the best tasting thing they ever had. I'm not joking. Okay, I'm a rotten kid when I was little. And so Berlin demarcation law. They didn't have the wall there. They just had a white line and 2 center boxes. And my brother COCC is terror on 2 feet. He didn't want to go to school. He didn't like the nuns. He's an artist. He used to draw the nuns in cartoon forms. And I said, COCC, you couldn't do that. Oh, shut up, Marishka. Just so anyway, we were in Berlin because we lived on the streets for a while. My dad just left us after the incident with the soldiers. We fended for ourselves. We stole. We did stuff. We had to live, So the French patrolled for 2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks, maybe a month. The Russian patrolled the Berlin line of demarcation, the British and the Americans. Okay, here come the French. We call them pigs. We call them pigs. The French are ooh la la, snot-nosed, and all that kind of stuff. We didn't like it, but we didn't throw rocks at them. The British, I mean, we're starving and you're sitting there having tea and crumpets. Even in the orphanage, you know, it's like, we haven't eaten all day. Well, it's tea time. Okay, can we put some arsenic in it for you? And then there were the Russians. My older brother, COCC, and some of us older kids, I was only 7, 6 before I was in the orphanage. He said, Mariska, you know, little ankle biter, door slammer, you guys go get rocks. And of course, Berlin is rubber. You want rocks? What size do you want? And so we would bring rocks, and they would, do you know inner tubes? You know how they look? Okay, so this is what they did. They took an inner tube, and they cut a section out of the inner tube, one piece like this. Okay? And they secured it with rocks like this, so it was a slingshot! Yay! Good job, brother. And so what we had to do is they would hold it, the boys would hold it back. This is horrible. We got rocks, and we put them in, and just they kept stretching, and it was pretty tight. And they'd say, "Hey, Ruski, look at us!" Da, 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 da. And my brother COCC would say, Mariska, listen, you say the words I'm telling you. So you teach me something in Russian. I didn't know what it was. And I'd say, you go over there, and I had curly hair and all that. And I'd send that, I said, blah, 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 blah. And the soldiers would come running. And they would take the thing and let it go and knock down the sentry boxes. Then the Russians would chase us. Now the rule was, you cross the white line, the American soldiers will shoot you. It's not where you belong. So we figured that game out. Then they came and got us and put in the orphanage. I remember one incident, I didn't tell it to the other class, when they actually, the place that was bombed, and I'll tell you about a little later, they came and they brought a goose, a dead goose. And I think it was one of my mother's brothers. But I don't know, like, do you know everybody in your family? Like with myself, I couldn't tell you even what the year I was born or what my birthday was and things like that. But my memories of my mom are very good. And I think there was also, remember when I used to tell you stories about the train rides. And I always wondered, like, I remember, I suppose they said I was born in 1940, okay? And basically, I know I was a year old when I remember the bombings. And I always wondered from history that Hitler and the bombings really were later on in 41 and 42, the battles. And when this, last summer, John, my son John and I, we were looking through the Polish cities and stuff. And when the American lady, it took 3 years for me to get over here from Germany. And the American lady was asking me questions, and they must have had information about me and my birth certificate on it, because she's the one that asked the one who was translating for the American lady, what is the name of this town? Because Polish are like this long letters for towns. And she said, well, it translates the town by the river of the Golden Sands. And I remember it was plain as day, and she looked at me, put her head on my forehead, and she said, we're not writing that in there. She said, just put down Sands, Poland. So all the years I was here before I became a citizen, it says Sands, Poland. There's no such place in Poland. It's Americanized anyway. And so last year, a year or two, John said, some of the cities, he said, Mom, let's look through the cities. And in the travel book, underneath it says what is close to translation. And there's no map here. And the part of, I figured out from things that I've read and pictures that I have, that I must have been, the part of Poland that I was born had to be way over in the northeast. If we get the map, I can show you.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Chop, chop.
I'm hurrying.
Okay. That's
Now I have to do this, so I hope that will make a change.
Okay.
Yes.
You, right,
Can I
can you
go
bring
bigger?
Poland? Yeah, a little bit. See, okay, here. Here's Poland. And, oops.
Bullet,
Okay,
move
bring it
it,
down.
it jumps a little bit.
Okay. Oops.
Oh, these computers.
That's why I don't like it. Oh, this is good enough.
All
Okay.
right.
So this is like Poland here, and it was divided. And there's a section like here. Now you gotta remember that all this after World War I belonged to Russia. So then it made sense to me that I wasn't born down here, like around Warsaw in the Ukraine. And if it was right in this edge that was part of Russia, because I remember the Russian music, the Russian soldiers and stuff. So then I thought about that, and so we were looking, and there is a town way up here on the tip, on the European tip. And it was called, they have a festival once a year for a week, and you can go there and you can pan for gold. And it is called the town by the Golden River. And in the article about it, it says every day you are allowed so many hours to pan for gold, and you actually get all the gold, you can keep it. And it's a national holiday, and so I said, John, this is where I was born. And so finally I figured out, well, if Hitler had invaded Poland, it didn't really get to me until after I was a year old. So it would have taken that long for him, because he stopped, you know, and then he invaded Russia, the Russian part of it. So then it made sense. And then also, when I told you guys, one day I just realized that the thing, I don't know anything about my mom and dad, my relatives. But then when I die, will the kids remember things that I told them? And when did mom do this and that? And I thought, so I need to go and write about it. And also, well, you guys have heard my talks. And record it. And there's, for you guys, I would even tell you, no matter what you think your life is like, you have got to record what you did, where you were born. If you know relatives, whether they're stinky or whether they're nice people, just record it, because it is your heritage. And see, I don't know anything about my mom. I have a wedding picture of her and so on. My dad was very handsome. And I don't know anything about my brothers and sisters even. And aunts and uncles, don't know. You know, and I think it's very important. And so I tried to put down as much as I can, and now I have pictures to match, and I'm running off pictures for all my kids. You know, here's your, this is your mother-in-law, my mother-in-law. But you know, but no matter what, and so I, like for example, I was 10 years old, and it was one of the most overwhelming days, and I was in an orphanage in Germany, and the Americans were running it, and they had a birthday party for me. Never had one. I got so overwhelmed, I cried, and I ran upstairs, and it was like, it was a milestone in my life. Nobody's ever cared about me. When I lived on the streets in Berlin, and we were like, once you liberate for the camps, where do you go? Okay, I'll go to McDonald's, have something to eat. No. No shoes, no clothing, no warm things like that. And you form gangs. I understand gangs. I understand why young kids will go with a group of kids if there's one person promising something to, like, say, not only nurture the body, but nurture the mind and listen to them. And we were hell on wheels. I mean, we were terrible kids in the sense that we stole. So what if I'm 6 years old? I learned how to steal. I was afraid for my brother, younger brother, so I tried to steal bread and things like that. And I was very blessed that the Americans got us together and put us in a home, and actually beds. Wow, this is a bed and a blanket, you know. And the food wasn't that great. Remember I told you about the oatmeal every day for 3 days. Oh, no sugar, no salt, no milk. But we had something at least, and then the fruit and stuff like that. And I think it was just part of life, but I try to write about it in my journals until I decide just write about it. Don't express opinions, just say what it is. And then I was thinking about that being the child. I'm a child of the Holocaust. I'm an old child, you know. I mean, I'm 75 years old, so it's like my kids and their kids. They don't really know about things like that. So no matter how insignificant you think your life is, it'll be very interesting. And I had my kids write journals from the time they could write. And my daughter, I kept all her stuff, and she said she sat and cried because she remembered friends and arguing with a girl in 7th grade and getting mad about her boyfriend. And those are it's important. And that's what I always emphasize for my students when I taught English and stuff like that. But anyway, so that part is taken care of, so we can get.
Switch it off?
Yep,
Yes,
we'll
ma'am.
switch, and I'll go through it. We didn't know we'd have a document camera, so I didn't bring the pictures. But basically, so that was, what I taught you about that was, I was about a year old then, because I could walk and I could look above the windowsill. That's how I relate to it. And that was when they had started bombing Poland. But now, from my history, I know they didn't bomb that part of, because it was Russia's, till later. And I remember the black things flying and coming down and the whistling sound and stuff like that. And I remember specifically because my mother was crying. And I was one of these kids. I was bad. I was bad. Always getting spanked, always tearing things apart, disobeying my mom, my dad. And my mom would say, Watsik, which was his name, that meant, okay, I'm getting a spanking and I have to be good. And the idea, I didn't really know what was happening, but because my mom was so upset, I knew that was something really bad. And that was the first memory. The other one that I remember was the train ride, and I told you guys about that. When we were in a train, and where was I going? I don't know. People would die, and usually they were so crowded. If you were standing, and you want to be away from, you want to get as close to the slats as you can, because to get air. Actually, they ran out of oxygen and stuff, and people would die from it. Hello there, how you doing? You gotten big. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Okay. And the train had stopped, and if you read anything about the trains, like I read With God in Russia by an American priest, 27 years in the Gulag, and he was talking about being in these prison trains during World War II and stuff, and he says, you will die because there's no oxygen left, because usually there were like 150, 200 people in that train, just crammed in. There's a bucket for doing for your personal needs, and one bucket of water, and they would just grab it, drink it, so people didn't have any. And one of the stories I read, they were on the sidetrack for 7 days, no water, no food, and so on. So we were on one of those trains, and it was stopped. And what the rule was, you would, if you could walk, crawl, you got out of the train, and whoever was left, they would come and take you out. The couples would come. And they weren't very respectful. They'd throw you on the wagon, and you would be taken to the crematorium. And I was sitting, all my memories have to do with my mom. And I was sitting next to my mother, and there was crying going on. And I wanted to see who was crying. And my memory is, the lady was having a baby, which I didn't know anything about. And they called the SS, or the people who were on the train station, and they killed the baby, and they smashed it against the side of the cab car. And the wife was crying, and they bayoneted her. I think one of them was through the eye and throat. And but this part I remember vividly. The man gets up and he attacks the soldier and says something which I couldn't understand, and he gets shot, and it do like that, and he falls down. And then they call the other, you know capos? What a capo? Capo is a German worker. Like, there could be Polish capos, Ukraine capos, German capos, prisoner who will work for the Nazis in exchange for food, and then they eventually get killed off. So the capos, very fearful, very cruel people. If you read World War II biographies, you go, whoa. But anyway, the capos came in, grabbed a man's hand and his legs, kept swinging it, and threw him on the wagon and snow. And I remember getting up and looking, and the snow turned red. And I turned to my dad and I said, Papa, the snow is red. So these are kind of like memories I have of things. And I don't always remember the sequences, but I remember certain things happening at the time of the year, like it was springtime or it was summertime or winter and stuff like that. My dad was in the Polish military. He was a Polish captain, cavalry, riding horses. And I never knew, like I said, too much about him. I have pictures of him. And he would live to be till 1978, but I didn't see him after 1950, 51. So don't know much about him. But the thing that has always amazed me is two things. Number one, if you read history, you guys should have taken history, World War II. Okay, do you remember when we were studying World War II, was it the Tannenberg? There's something about not Tannenberg, but the forest. I can't remember the name of it, but it was in Poland. And see, I read history and I go, wait a minute, but what about my father? Because there's a correction now. It was a grave that they've done, genetic, yes. They had done the DNA on some of those soldiers and stuff. And the Russians always accused the Germans of killing all those. 10,000 military personnel were shot in 1 week. And it was military, teachers, intellectuals, and the Nazis said the Russians did it, and the Russians said that the Nazis did it. But the point I'm making, my father was Polish military. Why didn't he get shot? Why didn't he get killed? Because they took a lot of Polish, you know, after the first battle when Poland was run over in 2 weeks, they took these military personnel and shot them in the mass graves. 2 years ago, they got permission from Russia to go in and do genetic and check the bullets, and it was the Nazis that killed all the Polish military. So there is one thing that my father survived, but he never talked. Now, whether I have an older brother and whether he told COCC about it, I don't know. COCC won't tell me. So I don't know if history is really bad or something like that. But the other thing that I wonder about is my mother. Now, there was an incident when we were, I always say, have you seen the Schindler's List? Have you seen it? They lived in an apartment, right? The big building. Well, that's how we lived in one of the places. I think it was called Belsen. There's a photograph of the place, and my dad put down Bergen-Belsen, so I think it's a town next to Bergen, which was a camp. Yes. And so that's kind of where we had a room, a stovepipe. Dad went every day to work somewhere in a factory and stuff. And I didn't really know the war was going on, so maybe that hadn't quite come. You know, we had fled from it. And that was one night, I remember, they always came at midnight, always when it was very dark. Everybody's sleeping. And we heard 2 soldiers marching down in the hallway, like the stone thing, and they put, you know, the German soldiers put brads in the bottom of the shoes so they would make a lot of noise. And it scared the livings out of you when you heard them. And at the night, all of a sudden you hear this, 2 of them, two. And they stopped by our door where my mom and the family were living. And I remember my mom being terrified, my dad also. And we were little ones, we learned we cannot sneeze, we cannot cough, we cannot cry, period, because it'll cost somebody's life. And we can even, I can remember even hearing the paper rattle, and they kept looking at Mom, and she was, and they said something, and they were laughing, and they went past our door, like next door, and well, there was like, you could hear through the walls, and we heard the door being crashed down, and them saying something, and shooting. I knew what that was, and screaming and yelling, and we just horrible, just terrified. And then it's all quiet, and that's it. And in the morning, I went to look because they were right next door. My mom told me not to, which was, yes, I will go look. And the door was crushed down, and I wanted to know what happened to the little girl. And there was blood, red stuff all over, and I could see long streaks of red stuff coming out of the room. And I ran back and I said to my mom that, where did they go? And she said, don't talk about it, and that's all she told me. So I'm trying to tell you that there was this, always the anxiety of, if I go here, maybe that will be, even like a betrayal, I suppose, or will I have food? And you always thought about food. And even in the orphanage, I think the American people finally could relate to it, because we always wanted to have, they gave us a cracker that was in a plastic, it was round, and they gave it to us and we kept it under our pillow because we wanted to wake up and know we had food. And it might seem silly to you, but that was our assurance that if nothing else, I'll still have a little bit of food tomorrow. And looking for, I remember one time after the war, we were taking walks on orphan kids, and not that we were very well liked, because we were Czech, Ukrainian, Polish, and the Germans really didn't like us. And they were harvesting pears, And they said, Maria, go ask them if we can at least pick up the pears on the ground. And so I went asking. I remember the boy was on a ladder and he said, you Polak something. And he said, no, you can't have any pears. And so we told him, the American said, fine, you know. And then he called us back and he said, little girl, come here. And so I thought, well, maybe he'd give us one. And he took a rotten pear and just threw it right at me in my hair. And so what I'm saying is, there was prejudice, there was kind of hateful behavior, because no matter what, because of the nationality and stuff. And so like I've told you when I had your class, wars never really end. They just kind of go underground, and there's always few that fester, and like the neo-Nazi movement, Odessa files and things. They did some surgery on me, but I really don't know why. Back here towards my kidney and below, and it doesn't hurt me that much. It used to hurt me a lot. And I remember in the hospital, I was in the hospital, and they were bombing, and the windows were rattling, and the lights went out. And I think it was a Russian hospital. How did I get there? I don't know. I think my dad smuggled me out of a camp, and something about telling me, putting me in a potato sack, telling me to keep quiet. But like he would have to tell me why. I just remember that part. And the Russians, as a child, you pick up a language like like within a matter of days. And I remember the Russian songs and stuff like that. And I used to sneak out of bed to look down what the Russians were doing, drinking vodka, dancing, and all that. And they brought lunch, and it was, I remember it was something I did not want to have. And it was something with kohlrabi. They used it instead of potatoes. Very disgusting after 290 days of it. And I said, no. I remember that. And the Russian lady said something in Russian. She didn't call me sweetheart, I'm sure. And she put the plate down. It was like on the tray. I was in a crib, 3 years old. I was tough. Don't mess with me, girl.
I'm not messing with you.
And I remember saying, I do not like that, and I just took the plate and threw it basically in her face. And she tied me with a straitjacket, put my hands like that, and got a stick and just keep feeding me on my surgeries. And a lady came in and told her not to do it, and she said some nasty words. But I mean, you have to, this is like a personal experience. When you read the story that you're reading in the book, you know, the zookeeper's wife, just think of how the whole time that the war is going on, you are always in fear of, will I live tomorrow? Where will I get my food? Can I trust people? And if you trust people, like if you have seen the movie The Pianist, about and how he was betrayed, and even see the movie like, and I was trying to think of some of the other, like The Hiding Place. Could you trust everybody? They have, when I went to Europe, I went to Anne Frank's place. And we all have read Anne Frank, right? You have no idea how spooky that place is. To live for 2 years, oh my gosh, maybe as big as this, and here's a toilet right there, in front of the whole world. Here's a sink. I walked in, and in the story says how she has pictures of movie stars and Queen Elizabeth and so on. They're still there. And I went towards this way, and the window is, you go up a couple steps, and here's the window that looked over the oak tree, which, by the way, crashed a year after I was there. So don't blame me for it. And thinking about Anne Frank writing stories about watching the people below, you know, and stuff. It sat in the same place, and then look at the bedrooms, and they had one of them marked, you know, no tourists can go in because the floor was becoming very weak. Well, how many people live there? 10? For 8 or 10? I couldn't live there with 2 people. And be quiet all day long, and take a bath just on Saturday or Sunday, make sure nobody was there. Now, the point is, Gazelle, the one who helped them, she put her life in danger, absolute danger. And when I walked into that room, and my son John, and I said, I cannot stay here. It was spooky. I mean, you just felt the sadness in that, and that they got along, and that she said, people are, I believe in people, and they're still very nice. Anne Frank was, she was great. I don't know if I'd ever be that way. And when thinking about that, I had to reassess my opinions of many things as I got older. I did not like my dad, because he always had money for whiskey. He always had money for bringing women in that I did not like, and I used to buy them. And when the 2 soldiers came and threatened him, the SS, after the war, and shot him, they said they would be back. Well, my dad took off, and I never saw him again. And I was 6 years old. But then as I got older, and I thought about things and having a family and stuff like that, I had no right to judge him, because despite the war, we always seemed to have food. He had to make a lot of sacrifices. He had his faults, but I thought, what if I lost my partner tragically? Mama died. His older son, he didn't know where he was. How about his sister? I know he had sisters. The sisters, they in fact, they died at the bombing, where the bomb went through the middle of the house, and they threw me out the window, you know, I told you that. And I said, no. And I took opinion that when you hear about people that you think were terrible, you have your opinion, but keep it to yourself, because someday you'll realize it was a harsh opinion. So I did what I thought was just. I wrote my dad a letter. He was still alive in Germany. Probably wrote it about 67. And I sent him a picture of my wedding to Mike, our 2 kids. Just told him a little bit about being a teacher, what I did. And I told him that I asked his forgiveness. And if I was there in front of him, I would kneel down and ask him to bless me, because I was very unjust in judging my parents. And I never wrote to him again. But I think that brought peace to me. And so some of the things like the book I was telling you about, the sunflower, I would recommend it to everybody, to the point that you're old enough to, everybody's suffered some prejudice, some dishonesty towards their being. And what Wiesenthal, who wrote The Night, he was asked to represent the Jewish people, to forgive. The soldier was dying, a German soldier. And he wrote this story about the talk and everything. He was in Auschwitz. And he said, I cannot forgive. What is the matter with me? And well, of course, if you read The Night, you know all the family and all the things he suffered. And so he decided to, at the end of the book, he sent it to certain people like senators, doctors, priests, rabbis, things like that. And he wanted a truthful answer to read this book and tell me, am I right or wrong? But I cannot forgive. And that's the book, whole essence is about people responding to forgive, whether they could forgive. And some people will say, yeah, I can forgive. But, you know, think about it. What these people have gone, And so I had to grow up and had to forgive my dad. I mean, he did abandon us, but it made me tough. And I remarried, and Floyd, as I was telling Floyd, I've never been without a house, without a home. The orphanage, foster parents, marriage, always had a home. God has always provided for me in a sense. I mean, I've been working, and my health is exceptionally good. When they didn't think I would live to be 30 years old, I said, really? Come and see me in a year. And when I was 38, I was so sick. For 3.5 years, I couldn't teach. And they always said, well, the doctor told my husband, my first husband, well, she's got cancer, she'll be dead in 6 months. I said, I don't have cancer. And I had surgery and I was very ill, and and that's another thing, being very depressed. I mean, I think all young people have depression. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, do talk to someone. I was so depressed, I was suicidal. I have 4 kids. And I'm thinking, and I sat, and I always look in the mirror and talk to myself. It's not crazy. It's therapy. And I said, I looked like a hag. I hadn't bathed for a week. I took my husband to the airport, and I was wearing my pajamas and probably smell. You know, I did. I mean, you guys that know me, I always dress up for teaching and stuff. And it was like, I think God just hit me really hard in the head. He must have. Because I saw my husband crying as he gets on the airplane. And I said, okay, Maria, yeah, your husband's crying, and you're feeling sorry for yourself. And I actually found a book at the airport, 50 cents, 10 Steps of Overcoming Depression. I said, okay, Lord, I'll try it. And I want you to know that people, what you suffer through and things, it's very universal.
Did you see your parents after that?
When we were in Bergen, Belsen, and I don't see now, my life is my mother. I don't know where Dad is, I don't know where my brothers and sisters are. Just because maybe it's a selective memory, I don't want to know it. I don't even know if they were with us. And I know just it's like all of a sudden, think of it like I have a book, and there's nothing on this page, but all of a sudden here's a picture. And that's how I remember it. And I said, all of a sudden like, Mom, why are we ropes to wrist and ankle to ankle? And we were lined up in a mass grave. Now, Bergen-Belsen was liberated by the British. I always thought it was the Americans. And I have video of it in the mass graves, the guy standing there and saying, we just liberated Belsen, and this is the mass grave. And I said to my mother, why are we here? And she said, we're going to go to heaven. And I said, I don't want to go. I remember saying that. And the people right in front, we heard boom, boom, boom. You know, a kid, what is it? There were some Nazis coming for us and stuff. And they were, kept doing that. And some of the soldiers put their guns down and started running. And, you know, now that I know history, what they were doing, taking prisoners' clothing and trying to pass off like prisoners. And they were actually lined up across to shoot at the next row, which I was included in, and the tanks came in. And I remember them blowing up that building over there, just, and everybody sitting down, my mother sitting down and crying, and actually getting some food.
Was it American tanks?
I think it had to be both the British and American.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, they took my mother away. And I never saw her for many years after that. So till her funeral, well, I went to see her and stuff, and when she was sick. And my dad was gone. I was never, not always with my siblings, you know, like in the orphanage over here, my brothers, it's kind of like they disappeared. And then one day I'm told, well, these are your brothers and sister. You know, it's kind of hard to relate. So I never made a lasting, how do you say, attachment to them, where I couldn't really bond with them. I'll tell you an interesting thing. In I would say 1959, when I was 19 years old, I lived with the Wileys. They were a foster family, very good to me. And every year we used to go, we lived in Omaha, Nebraska, we would go on Highway 30, go past Woodbine, Iowa, and then we hit the highway, we headed up to Minnesota to Bay Lake, which is way over there. We did it for 2 or 3 years. And I was just getting ready to go to college. And I was teaching, so it would have been in 61, 62. And sister comes running in, she goes, "Oh my gosh, Miss Wiley, your twin brother is there." I said, "I don't have a twin brother. He's there. Here, he's just like you." I go, "I do not have a twin brother." And it was my youngest brother, Larry. We all look alike. You've seen one of us, you've seen us all, you know, we can't help it. And anyway, so he came to see me about two or 3 years before. Somebody came to the front door, my foster mother said, "There are 2 guys here, they're asking for you." I said, "Okay." And I looked and I said, "Who are you?" He says, "I'm COCC, my older brother, and I'm Larry." So that was before that time. "Okay, are you ready for this?" This happened in 59. For 5 years, we drive down Woodbine, Iowa, past the farm, to go there, and we come back. They lived on the farm in Woodbine, Iowa. My brothers, both brothers, and they were taken by a farm family after I was taken by the Wileys. And I didn't even know it. So I mean, the coincidence of it is just amazing. And then both of them went into the Army. My older brother retained the reading and speaking of the 4 languages, so I think in the Army he went to Germany, and I'm sure he did translating, stuff like that, you know. But I always think it's so interesting. And another thing, when we were liberated, Ernie Baptist is a full-blooded Hawaiian. He lives in Honolulu. And he was in church at Sun River one day, and he said, "Are you the lady that tells the stories about the prison camps?" I said, "Yeah, I am." Tour mass, you know. I'm talking, my father is trying to do his thing. And after church, he said, "What prison?" And I was in Bergen-Belsen. And Bergen and Belsen were, I think, connected. And, okay, to make a short story, to make the long story shorter, it was a full-blooded Indian, Native American Indians, Hawaiians who made up this thing. So they didn't know German. It was in 1945, that would be in June. And he said he was a Hawaiian, and he said, "I thought it was pretty hot stuff. I was 19. And we were going there, and it really smells bad. It was smelling really, really bad. And I said, you know, the camp, they didn't realize they were coming close to our camp. And I don't remember the whole story, he said, but we saw cattle cars, and so my captain, he always referred to him as my captain, said, "Why don't you go to, some of you guys go and knock off the locks and see if it's dead animals. If it is, we're torching everything." And he said, I knocked the lock down and opened the door, and he says, dead bodies came out. That's one thing I had to learn myself. I mean, maybe people can, but you say, okay, I am going to try and work positively. And the person makes me mad. But instead of hitting, biting, or kicking, pulling hair, or trying to push him down the steps, just say, admitting that you are angry. And that's some of the things that, like what, I really do think children should have the right to come up and say, I'm angry with you, or I disagree with you, and it's making me feel bad because I have these feelings. I do. I mean, I've had kids say, you know, Miss Hausman, you're a bitch this today. I said, thank you for telling me. And the next day I said, I know I was, I'm not joking. They're making us all gang members. You know, I said, I know I was, but I'll every time I start getting cross, I'm going to take some time. And that helped me a lot too. But I know what anger is. I know what rejection is, hunger. The one or two kids in your class, they come with the same pair of jeans, or they wear the same sweater. And I never had change of clothes. I never knew you took a bath and combed your hair, you know, and having things thrown. So I hope it never made me forget my background, and to remember that there was someone along the line that helped me. The day I learned to read and draw, whoa. You bite somebody, you don't get a book for a whole week, okay. And I remember the first story I read was Rapunzel. It was old German. And, you know, so a person needs something that is just their own. And sometimes we belittle, and we say, oh yeah, you're lying. You know, I don't think I always lie. I've heard that, you know, she always lies. Well, let's talk about it. Let's see what she's saying in the circumstances. You know, I am tough, aren't I? I'm not mean, but don't cross the line with me. I used to draw a line when I had the game. Yeah, I've done that. But in the inner city, I said, no, here's a rule. They knew all the rules. If I start drawing a line, when I get to that half of it, I'm just about on the brink. And just go and it is all the way across. I said, okay. Take out your dictionary and page 189, copy every word. Shut your mouth or I will throw you out.
Oh, I love that. Does everybody get that?
And I made one kid do it. It was any book, and I said, yeah, dictionary. And he went into in-school suspension. I checked every punctuation, every apostrophe. He would tell the kids, oh, I did that. Wow, she wasn't kidding. I said, now it looks fine. Watch real carefully. Shred. Now you owe me 3 days of homework.
I'm a pushover.
Did you ever spank your kids?
My own flesh and blood? No. We had, like if they're angry or they're upset with each other.
No, like they got you upset, and then.
Oh, no, I never spanked it. There was a rule. You go sit in a corner. You're angry, you can draw a picture, whatever, but shut your mouth. And you're upset about something, you go to your room, you can whine. Half an hour, feel sorry for yourself. Call anybody you want names. Throw things around as long as you're own, and you're going to pick them up. And come back, and if you're not over it, you better straighten out. I won't tolerate it. Your life isn't that hard. Yeah. So,
Anything else? Because I think we're reaching an end point here.
isn't it time for all of them to go home?
I think so.
I hope so.
And
I had some pictures, but
let's all stand up in honor of this wonderful woman and what she has.
yes. And I stand up before you, could.